Hi, good afternoon. I'm here in Los Altos Hills. Just finished my Sunday hike with my group, and we had a terrific hike today and worked on personal relationship issues. And again, it was amazing to me how extremely difficult it is for people to develop close relationships with loved ones when when we feel angry or irritated or defensive. And it just always blows my mind how it seems a good 10 times harder to develop intimacy and to deal effectively with the personal relationship conflict, 10 times harder than overcoming depression and anxiety, which in my experience can usually be done, pretty quickly and to a pretty dramatic degree. And I'm still trying to figure out, I have some ideas and we'll probably publish on it in Feeling Good blogs or podcasts or whatever, why it is that it's so much harder to resolve relationship problems and develop intimacy and love, so much harder than to develop, solve individual mood problems and to develop joy and self-esteem when you're depressed and angry. But I have a question or two to get us started, but let me just acknowledge a few of our early comers. There's Marie K. Bangura, thank you for coming, and Elizabeth Lily Catherine. And I wanted to mention what I posted in words here, but Tyann Trong has been really helping me and helping Lisa Kelly promote some of my work and the podcasts and these Facebook broadcasts and my blogs. And I greatly appreciate your support and efforts, Tyann. Now, all this stuff flowing across the screen, that's pretty cool. There were some smiles and stuff like that. We've got Elizabeth Lily Catherine and Lisa. Hi, Lisa. And Sarah Britos Leon and Quinteria Cordero and Tyann. Hi, Tyann. And Trong, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. I've never heard it pronounced, so I'm just guessing. Howard Whitehouse, Malad Karampur, and Paul Panzer. Selma Franca joined, so hopefully others will come too. And if you have questions, post them. As I say, I have one or two to get us kind of rolling, get us in the spirit. Let me report also that Jill Levitt, who I teach with at Stanford at my free Tuesday group for Bay Area therapists. We have a free training group at Stanford on Tuesdays from 5 to 7:30, and any San Francisco Bay Area therapists can come and join and get free training, free personal work, difficult case consultation. But I teach that with Jill Levitt, and we had the great opportunity to present at the ABCT conference in San Diego on Thursday. We did a 6-hour workshop on team therapy. Actually, I guess it was more of a 7-hour workshop. And then on Friday afternoon, we did a 3-hour workshop featuring our live video excerpts from our work with Karen, a colleague who had experienced horrific trauma since her daughter had been shot by neighboring boys with a high-powered pellet rifle when she was 12. And Karen had been blaming herself for this for 9 years and thinking it was her fault and she was a bad mom, and she volunteered to do a live demonstration with Jill and me at our intensive a year and a half ago in San Francisco at the summer intensive, and it was a fantastic session, and we showed excerpts from that and taught people how we brought about this high-speed, very dramatic change in symptoms. The responses from the people who came was tremendous. The groups were very warm, very open, very vulnerable. Our only disappointment was that the attendances were really small. Maybe 20 at our 25 at our full day workshop, maybe 40 or 45 at our 3-hour workshop. And that was a huge disappointment. And I think part of the problem was these workshops just simply weren't promoted by ABCT, who were kind of heavy into promoting Beck's original version of cognitive therapy, and perhaps not so keen on promoting some of the work that we've been developing here at Stanford. That's just a guess, and may not be correct. But at any rate, we had a wonderful experience. But it was sad to me that the people who came just said they were blown away. One complaint we got is this: the work you're doing, the workshop was awesome. Why is it that it wasn't advertised or promoted as something important to this organization, important for people to attend? And that actually brings me to one of the questions here, and a very good one that we got probably a couple of weeks ago. This came in on October 30th from David. David from London, David Pearson, actually. So I don't even know if David listens to these, but I'll read his question at any rate. I'm one of those people who's been deeply torn by the apparent rupture among therapists based on a tools-based approach, such as you used in Feeling Good, and advocate powerfully elsewhere, and a more long-term depth-based approach, such as described in The Examined Life by Stephen Gross, or the works of Irving Yalom. The article in the UK Guardian entitled Therapy Wars by Oliver Burkeman seemed to give a good summary of the arguments and counter-arguments. Do you think there's anything in what seems to be the recent research and resurgence of more long-term depth-based approaches, or do you still regard these, as I think you do, or at least have done in the past, as wasteful and ineffective? With best wishes and thanks in advance for any reply you are able to give. And I was planning to do this one on an Ask David with Fabrice, so he could chime in. And sadly, I don't have Fabrice's great mind and thoughtfulness to chime in now. But we spoke about it briefly, and I can't give you any definitive, answers to any of these things. I'll just tell you my own perceptions and experiences for what they're worth. I asked Fabrice, about Yalom. He's here at Stanford, although our paths don't ever cross. And I know he's very beloved and very famous and has tremendous followers. And so I asked Fabrice, what is his approach? What's your understanding of it? Because I'm sure that he's doing some great work, and people who are doing long-term therapy, it wouldn't be my place to judge them. I don't really understand what they're doing for the most part, to be honest. I'm just lucky to have the chance to do my thing, much less judge what others are doing, especially when I have so little understanding. But I asked Fabrice, and he said that Yalom is into existential therapy, and the basis of existential therapy, as Fabrice put it, is that the fear of death is the core fear of most, if not all, psychiatric disorders or psychological problems, something to that effect. And I do have some pretty firm thoughts about that, because I've had definitely more than 35,000 therapy sessions with people struggling with depression and anxiety and other kinds of problems. And I've only had people worried about the fear of death on 5 or 6 occasions. And in pretty much every case, I was able to get them over the fear of death in a single therapy session, I think without exception. And I even did a Feeling Good podcast on that. I'll have to try to find the link to it. I didn't look that up before the broadcast, but I show exactly how to overcome the fear of death. A few patients with panic disorder have also had the fear of death, fearing that they would die of a heart attack during a panic attack, and that too can usually, or I would say nearly always, be treated in a way that leaves nothing to be desired in a single therapy session. So I don't see that as the cause of all or even most psychiatric disorders, and certainly not something that you'd have to spend your life trying to get over. But at the same time, the people doing long-term therapy may be helping people with relationship problems and to feel a deeper appreciation for life or something of that nature. I see myself as a therapist as contracting to help people with specific kinds of issues. For example, I think I'm pretty good at treating depression, and tremendous numbers of people, even listening to this broadcast right now, may be struggling with depression, feeling sad or down in the dumps, or feeling like you're not as good as you should be, or feeling like a failure, or feeling unlovable or unmotivated. And when you get up, you say, ugh, what's the point of getting out of bed even? And generally, when I'm working with people with depression, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, what they want is to get over the depression and to wake up and to say, hey, it's great to be alive. I feel terrific, not only for the depression to go away, but to feel joy and self-esteem and happiness, or self-acceptance, if you prefer, but to feel joy and daily living. And so I've devoted my life to how to bring that change about quickly, not over a long period of time. And often now using the new team therapy, I see a complete elimination of symptoms in just a single 2-hour therapy session. And many of my colleagues working with traditional hour-long sessions are seeing many patients, if not most, recover completely in 3, 4, 5, 6 therapy sessions. Obviously, that we can't deliver that to every person, but we see that with an awful lot of people, and that's what my patients want, and also what I want for them. I used to have patients who came to me like early in my career, and they'd say, "Oh, Dr. Burns, I just want to kind of talk about my life and my childhood," and to tell you the truth, I never had any luck with that. I never saw that going anywhere for anyone. And that doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do. Maybe just David doesn't have the skill to do that. Maybe her Yalam does, or other people have a beautiful, green thumb for working with people like that. But what I used to tell people was, I tell you what, I'd be glad to explore your childhood with you and talk about, the deeper meaning of life. Once you're cured of your depression or anxiety and are, totally recovered, then if you want, you can stay in therapy as long as you want, just talking about your childhood. But you have to do your psychotherapy homework. We've got to show you how to crush these distorted negative thoughts that are creating your misery first. And to tell you the truth, once patients felt happy and joyous and were no longer depressed, I never had a single one. Then I would always say, "Oh, now would you like to stay in therapy, and come and talk to me every week about your childhood?" And I never once had a patient who wanted to do that. Finally, this thing about therapy wars by Oliver Burkeman. Well, that sounds like a wonderful article in the UK's Guardian. Maybe people can look it up online. I didn't have time to look it up online before the broadcast, but I love the title of that. And my feeling is that we have therapy wars, that we've got schools of therapy that compete like religious cults. And they all claim to have the best answer and the best approach, and often they're headed by narcissistic gurus who people worship and idolize, and they often put down other schools of therapy. I've found myself doing that at times, putting down other schools of therapy, and people kind of don't like it when I do that, and understandably. But I believe that all schools of therapy we need to get rid of, and this wars between schools of therapy makes no sense. It's not productive, and I think we need to develop a science-based, data-driven science of psychotherapy that's based on what's work and how to bring the best treatment to each individual who's suffering. And that's why I've developed Team therapy, team, T-E-A-M, is not yet another school of therapy. It's a structure for how all of psychotherapy works. And it's based on process research. What is it that therapists do when they're being effective? What are the effective ingredients of psychotherapy, regardless of what school of therapy? And what is ineffective? And can we develop data-driven therapy where you're measuring things at the start and end of every session, and you begin to see what's working and not working and move forward like that? I believe this will be the psychotherapy of the future. It's my hope, and that we'll get rid of the schools of therapy. You don't see schools of medicine. Medicine is based on science and surgery and outcome studies and research studies, and you don't see doctors saying like, oh, I'm in the penicillin school, so if you have a broken leg, I'm going to treat you with penicillin. If you've got a brain tumor, I'm going to treat you with penicillin. That would be ridiculous. Doctors use all the tools at their disposal, and in team therapy, I have used 50 or 75 methods at least, drawn from a dozen or more different schools of therapy. So anyway, those are my thoughts for what they're worth, and if they're kind of half-baked, I apologize for that, but I thought it was a great and important question. Now I'm going to skim through more and more people here. Phil says, Phil McCormack, this is really cool. Thanks, Dr. David. You're welcome, Phil. And thank you for attending. And George Ronan joined. And Tyann Trong says, how disappointing. I truly wish the world knew about the power and beauty of Team CBT. Yes, disappointing. That's how I was really feeling, really at the ABCT. And Robert Schachter, who's one of the high-ups at ABCT, he was the one who got me to present. And I said, I'll present if Jill can present with me because she's so fabulous. And he was so gracious in persuading ABCT to invite us to come and do a couple of workshops. And he had a reception for me after the day one workshop, and he invited the top bigwigs, from ABCT to come. It was just in the hotel lobby. He had some wine and cheese and crackers, and Robert Schachter from New York at the New York Feeling Good Institute, which is a really fabulous new team CBT treatment and training program in New York. He organized that, and all these people came and kind of graciously kind of saying, well, why don't you fold your team CBT into the greater academy of cognitive therapists? And they were very, very warm and gracious, but I found myself just feeling kind of really sad and just probably feeling like this will be my last ABCT conference, unless they would do something to make it more worthwhile, and in terms of encouraging their people that this is new and exciting material, and sometimes political considerations play into these issues. But yes, that was a pretty sad night for me, to be honest. I think I felt the lowest Thursday night that I felt in probably 20 years. But then when Thursday afternoon came and we had a much bigger crowd, not huge like what I'm used to, but a much bigger crowd, and people were so warm and friendly, it made me feel really happy. But we shouldn't have been having groups of 20 and 40. We should have had many hundreds of people from that conference. That would be my opinion, and that's probably my narcissism talking, so I'll shut up and go on to another question here. Julie Simmons says, I'd be interested in hearing more from you, Dr. David, about using the Common Self-Defeating Beliefs worksheet in Team CBT? Well, that's a good question. The one of the things in the therapist toolkit, and probably also in most of my books, is a list of common self-defeating beliefs. The list I have in the toolkit to distribute to patients has 23 self-defeating beliefs, and it's almost as popular with patients as the 10 cognitive distortions. You know, the cognitive distortions are like all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filter, jumping to conclusions, should statements, all of that. The self-defeating beliefs are a little bit different. Those are the beliefs under the surface, like perfectionism, thinking you've always got to be perfect, and you know, second level is not good enough, and if you're not a complete success, you're a complete failure. And then another self-defeating belief is perceived perfectionism, and that's the idea that you folks won't love or respect me unless I impress you in some way, that I have to earn your friendship. And if you see me vulnerable or weak or make a mistake, then you'll reject me. And so if you have this perceived perfectionism, you can never really feel at ease with people, or to be open, or to be vulnerable, because you feel like you always have to perform and earn love, earn a connection with others. And then achievement addiction is the idea my worth as a human being depends on my achievements. Or there's the love and approval cluster, like my worth, you know, I must be loved to feel happy and fulfilled. If I'm alone, I can't, I'm bound to be miserable. I can't feel completely happy or fulfilled when I'm alone, or I need everyone's approval to feel happy and fulfilled. And then there's like the submissiveness cluster. I always have to give and please other people, even at the extent of my own needs and feelings and so forth. And there's 23 of these, and you can do a downward arrow technique, which I've gone over in my Feeling Good podcast, to get at people's self-defeating beliefs. But you can also just have them look at this and circle their self-defeating beliefs, and then once they've pinpointed them, then you can help the person change these beliefs. And the idea is, when you change a self-defeating belief, you're working at a deeper level. And the way cognitive therapists view this is that it's the combination of a self-defeating belief plus a negative event produces distorted negative thoughts that will then generate depression or anxiety or anger or whatever your negative feelings are. So, for example, let's say you have the achievement addiction and you base your self-esteem on being successful. Then cognitive therapists predict that when you feel you're being effective or successful, like if I have a good broadcast today, then I'll feel happy and fulfilled because I'll say, oh, I did a good thing. People like the broadcast, the Facebook video broadcast, or whatever you call this, and so I'm worthwhile. But we would predict that you'll become anxious and depressed whenever you fail, or you feel like you're in danger of failing at something. And so the idea is, when you change someone's self-defeating belief, not only are you helping them feel better in one moment when they were upset, but you're also reducing the likelihood that people will have episodes of depression and anxiety in the future, and that when they do get upset, it will be easier to pop out of these episodes. And I would say that this is a really useful heuristic in therapy. By heuristic, I mean it sounds true, it seems to be true, and it seems very helpful when I'm working with patients. Whether it's true on a research basis, I think is open to question. I think that most of our theories about the causes of things are probably not likely to pan out when we get good research data to validate these different theories, but it certainly does seem helpful to patients, and and it certainly makes sense to people. The way you would change a self-defeating belief would depend on who is the patient, what is the belief that you're trying to change. Any of my 50 or 75 techniques you can use to help patients change their self-defeating beliefs. You can do a cost-benefit analysis. You can use the semantic method. You can use the feared fantasy technique. You can use examine the evidence. For example, we once treated a man who was at the time a pretty famous television celebrity. He was on television every night doing a kind of show that was extremely popular. But his self-defeating belief turned out to be, perfectionism. I have to be perfect, or people will reject me, and my perfection is kind of the key to my fame. And indeed, he was very polished and impressive on his evening national television show. But the intervention that proved helpful to him was to simply ask his colleagues and the people he worked with at the TV station, would you think less of me if I failed or screwed up or made a mistake, or if I was vulnerable or got emotionally upset, or if I felt inadequate or shared these kinds of vulnerable feelings with you? Would you think less of me? And he was really shocked and surprised to discover that every one of his colleagues said, oh no, we would feel so much closer to you. We're actually kind of afraid of you. You're so perfect and so powerful, and that we're kind of scared at you, afraid that we'll make mistakes. And if you were vulnerable or showed your vulnerability, it would make a world of difference. And this really blew his mind. That was just one technique called examine the evidence, or you can call it the survey technique or the experimental technique. But the technique that helps one person might not help the next. The treatment always has to be individualized. So anyway, thank you for that neat question. Let's see what else we've got here. Please talk about your experience with profound grief healing and cognitive distortions. Well, that's a great question, and I would actually direct you to our recent podcast. This is Debbie Nordholm working with Marilyn Coffey, who allows us to use her name, a dear colleague who was recently diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. She was not a smoker, went to the doctor and found this out, and experienced shock and severe grief, severe depression, severe anxiety. And in these cases, it's still your thoughts and not the upsetting event that creates your negative feelings. And those thoughts will nearly always be distorted. And when you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. But her thoughts were that, and we've gone over this, so I'll be very short. You can listen not only to the live treatment session with Marilyn, which she completely blew away her negative thoughts and feelings, as well as a tune-up that we did about 8 weeks after that, when she had a brief relapse, when she got a painful metastasis to her ribs, and again became panicky and depressed and angry. But her thoughts were, that she's been a very spiritual woman during her life, and she was telling herself that she was a failure because she had lost her belief in God and lost her belief in the afterlife, and also criticizing herself for not having fulfilled herself interpersonally as well as she had hoped and wanted in terms of love relationships, and also she had strong feelings of anger that the people who had been her spiritual teachers through the years, she began to think of them as frauds and fakes, and had a lot of anger. And they were beautiful sessions. We've had so many wonderfully warm and open responses from people who were just saying, Marilyn, you changed my life, showing your vulnerability, and your darkest time was so healing for me. And I called those first sessions the dark night of the soul, and how losing your faith and getting lost is actually has always been viewed from the point of Christian mysticism, and I think from Buddhism and perhaps the mysticism of most, if not all, religions, as a key stopping point on the path to enlightenment. You can't be found until you're lost. And if you listen to those podcasts, you can certainly hear Marilyn being lost in the most profound way a human being can be lost, and see the miracle where she suddenly becomes found and experiences her personal enlightenment. And it seems so weird to say it, but she went from horrible anger, rage, and desperation and hopelessness to actually joy and laughter. And you can hear it happening live. In my experience, people who have had profoundly traumatic events that have intense grief are pretty much always the easiest to treat and the most heartwarming to treat. So thank you for that, and we can do more on patients who are experiencing massive trauma and how they were able to recover so rapidly when using the team therapy concept. Eric George, hi Eric, hi David, great to see you. Thank you. And Lucy Dela Cruz joined. Hi Lucy, and Malad Karampur. And he's writing in Arabic, and I would speak in Arabic and read his Arabic writing, but it would be too much of a show off. So I won't do that. I'll just stick with English today. That also was my feeble attempt at humor, and I have no idea if my humor works on these because I can't get any feedback from you folks. But I'll do my best. Masood Kenan Kunal, and I love these names from all over the world, and I just love the multicultural aspect of people from different religions and different paths of life and different countries finding warmth and love and connection together in this way. And Masood said, I loved your book dearly, and would you give advice to anxiously attached individuals? And I don't know quite what you mean, but you could be meaning one of two things. I'll just give you brief response here. Anxiously attached can mean you're attached to some person, and so you're needy, and there's someone you love and want, and maybe they're rejecting you and giving you the runaround, and you're feeling kind of miserable. And if that's what the question is about, you might want to read my book, Intimate Connections. It's one of my less serious books, but it's all about being single, being afraid of being alone, being afraid of rejection, and finding that you're not doing well in the dating arena, and you're kind of lonely and shy and anxious, and really shows you how to play the dating game and get people chasing after you in unlimited numbers, and it makes no difference if you're a man or if you're gay and wanting people of the same gender to chase you, or you're heterosexual and you want people of the opposite gender to chase you. It shows you the secrets of how to do that. That book will not show you how to have a good, loving relationship, however. It will just show you how to get people chasing after you and put you in control of the dating situation. If you then want to move on to how to have a meaningful, loving relationship with someone, you need my book, Feeling Good Together, which is how to develop a deep relationship. Now, if you were just talking about anxiety in general, Masood, anxious individuals who have like panic attacks or generalized anxiety or phobias or PTSD or OCD or any of these various forms of anxiety, then the book you would want is When Panic Attacks, which is one of my most recent books. And it's kind of like Feeling Good was the solution for depression. If you're depressed, you need to read Feeling Good. But if your problem is any kind of worry or anxiety, then the book you need to read is When Panic Attacks. And also, I've had probably about 6 or 8 podcasts in my Feeling Good podcasts on my website, www.feelinggood.com, and then go to the podcast and click the Feeling Good podcast. And we've done about a little over 60 now, and there's been at least 8 of them fully devoted to fast, effective treatments for all of the anxiety disorders. So that might be another good free resource for you as well. Oh, and thank you, Tyann Trong. Yes, it's podcast 18 called Ask David. This is Feeling Good Podcast. Ask David, Overcoming the Fear of Death. So if you go to my website, go to the Feeling Good Podcast, and then go backwards to podcast 18, and then you'll see how to overcome the fear of death in a single therapy session, or just in a single 30-minute Feeling Good podcast. We've got Isabel Marty, Jennifer Sweeton. Welcome. Benjamin Mitchell. Hi from London. Where's the best place to get the latest version of your daily mood log? If you're a general public person, you would find it in my latest book, When Panic Attacks. If you're a therapist, you might want to go to my website and order the Therapist Toolkit, and you'll get a free massive upgrade, and it has hundreds and hundreds of pages of all the latest tools to professionalize your practice, including the awesome newest version of the daily mood log. Also, if you listen to the Feeling Good podcast, I often post the daily mood logs from individuals that we're treating on the Feeling Good podcasts. Here's a good basic question by Noreen Cleary Brown. She says, how do you know if you have anxiety or depression? Well, Beck gave a great answer to this years ago. And he said, anxiety is you're worried about something terrible that's just about to happen. So if you have a fear of flying, you think if I get on that plane, it's going to crash. Or if you have public speaking anxiety, as I used to have, you think, oh, when I get in front of the audience, I'm going to make a fool of myself. My mind will go blank. People will see how nervous I am. They'll judge me. They'll reject me. And he said, you can think about hanging from a cliff by the tips of your fingers, feeling like you're going to fall at any moment. That's anxiety. Something terrible is about to happen. Depression is more like you've already fallen and you're on the ground at the bottom of the cliff with your arms and legs broken beyond despair, and just feeling hopeless and worthless, and like you're no good and your problems will go on forever. Now, it's interesting that although depression and anxiety are quite different kinds of emotions, they often coexist together. And of patients who have elevated scores on my depression test or anyone's depression test, nearly 100% of them will also have elevated scores on an anxiety test. So if you're feeling depressed and worthless, you're probably also feeling anxious, worried, and nervous. However, if you look at the population of people who have elevated scores on an anxiety test, only about half of them will be depressed. And that's because you can be anxious about something without feeling worthless or hopeless, like you might have a phobia, like the fear of bees, like I used to have when I was growing up, along with tons of other phobias I used to have. but I didn't feel like I was less of a human being because I was afraid of bees. I was just afraid of bees. So you can be anxious without being depressed, but half of anxious patients will be depressed. And about 100% of depressed patients will also feel anxious. But the feelings are very, very different to my way of thinking. Jennifer says, hello, Dr. Burns. Good to see you. Thank you. And it would be so neat if this Facebook thing is modified to where the people watching can actually talk and we can dialogue. That would be really cool, because then we could do role plays and I could interact with you and stuff. Yaneth Camacho joined. Jennifer Lish joined. Hi. Julianne Linden joined. Luz Cecilia joined. Yaneth Camacho says, Mil saluda a tu familia. Thank you. Les mandos, besos y abrazos de Colombia. Soy de Medellín. Cuídate de tu saludo. Wasp. And then numbers in Yaneth. Well, my Spanish probably isn't the best, but it sounds like you're from Colombia, and I'm very honored that you joined from Colombia today. Thank you. Yvette Medu Montanez Madreno joined. Azizul Hack joined. Osvaldo Aravena Rosales. Deb Nordum says, yes, I watched it. But isn't feeling sad a part of grief? Yes, feeling sad is a part of grief. And most people who are in grief don't need treatment. It's just when the grief becomes very intense or prolonged that people come to treatment, and then I look at their distortions. But grief is a normal human experience, and it's not one we need to treat or even should treat. Like I sometimes answer this question in workshops and talk about a cat who I talk about my cats, and cat lovers will know how awesome it is, and people who aren't cat lovers will think I'm wasting their time because they think cats are terrible. But my wife turned me into a cat lover, and we had two little cats, Happy and Popcorn, that we adopted at 5 weeks old years ago, and they just loved us so much, and Popcorn became my best friend at that time, and I just loved him tremendously, just absolutely. I was really in love with him, to be honest. I just loved him, and he just loved me. And even at the computer now, if he was still alive, he'd be here on my lap, and he'd get up and look in the camera, and he was just so friendly. But we found out when he was 9 years old, or 8 years old, that he had an inherited heart condition, and he started throwing these horrible, painful emboli to his paws, and he would just scream. And we took him to the vet. Didn't know why he was in such pain. They said he's throwing emboli from his heart to his legs, and it's incredibly painful for him. And he has what's called a cardiomyopathy, and they're genetic. And the only treatment would be a heart transplant, and there is no heart transplant for cats. And so we had to buy this very costly shots. We had to give him blood thinners every day so he wouldn't throw the blood clots. And I think we were able to get it from Canada to save money because of this horrific exploitation of the American people by drug companies, charging exploitative prices for these new medications, which is one of the things that angers me a lot. But ignoring that, for the moment, we gave him, these shots, and he didn't have any emboli, but I told him, I said, Popcorn, I love you, and I'm never going to let you suffer. I want you to know that. And then when the end came, he went into cardiac pulmonary failure, and he was having trouble breathing as his lungs were filling up with fluid. And I knew it was time, and we took him to the vet, and they said, well, we can put a needle in his chest and pull the fluid off, and he'll feel better. And I said, how long will that last? And they said, well, about a day, and then he'll fill up with fluid, and we'd have to do it again. And I said, you know, he doesn't want to have needles, you know, poked into his chest over and over every day until he dies. And I promised him I would never let him suffer. And I think the time has come to say goodbye. And so they came and they gave him the shot. I was holding him in my arms, and you know, he kind of slipped away in my arms. And my wife, when she saw that, she just started sobbing. And she couldn't take it, and she ran out into the waiting room. But I just kept holding him in my arms, and I kept stroking him, saying, Popcorn, I always loved you. And the tears were going down my cheeks. And I said, I've loved you more than life itself. And I cried. And after 15 minutes, they came in and said, can we take him now? And I said, no, I need a few more minutes with him. I knew he was dead, but I just wanted to keep petting him and tell him how much I loved him. And I cried. And then they took him, and then they sent us his ashes, and with his name, you know, in a box, and we keep that in our TV room, so he's always with us. But that grief does not need treatment. That grief means that I've loved, I've been alive, I've been connected with life, and those tears that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But when people need treatment for grief, it's when they have excessive depression, anxiety, and anger caused by distorted thoughts. And that's something that can be treated and is, in my experience, pretty much always very easy to treat. And no, we're not trying to lessen the sadness, Deb. We're trying to lessen the depression, the guilt, the shame, the anger, the powerful feelings that are actually interfering with the person's ability to cry and say goodbye and let go. And then Brad, Rose joined us, and Laura and Craig, Craig Jack. Hi, David. Craig here from a workshop in Red Deer. Oh, I remember that one, and another in Boston a couple years back. Thanks for your continued dedication to the field and your passionate efforts to help spread TEAM. Working hard here in upstate New York to spread word about TEAM and its application. Well, that's cool, Craig. I'm thrilled to hear that. You might want to get in, if you're not already, in the TEAM certification program. You can contact the Feeling Good Institute, www.feelinggoodinstitute.com, and they've got a certification program and online training groups that you can join. My colleague Jill Levitt teaches many of them, Mike Christensen up in Canada, Daniel Minty in New Mexico, and these are small, really neat groups to get refined training in TEAM, and then you might want to start your own TEAM therapy center or training group right there where you live, and they could also provide, if you were interested in that, and some mentoring and help in doing that. We've got April Phillips-Berger from North Carolina. Hello to you. And Ellie joined, and I think you've been on previous, joined us in the past, and Bradley Cousins. How do you respond when you ask Deb says, how do you respond when you ask a patient to tell me your thoughts about a specific situation, and they say, I don't know. Well, the way I do it, and this would be more part of the empathy phase of the session, but I use a daily mood log and ask the patient to write down a particular moment when he or she was feeling upset and wants help. Like, what time of day was it? Where were you? who were you interacting with, what was going on, and then have them circle their feelings. There's an emotions table right under the place where it says describe the upsetting event. And there's about 9 different categories of emotions, and they circle how sad or down or depressed they are, and how strong that is between 90 or between 0 and 100. And then how anxious, worried, or nervous are they between 0 and 100? And how inadequate and defective do they feel? And how ashamed and guilty do they feel? And how angry and how hopeless? And get all of these negative feelings. And then I say, now, what are the thoughts going through your mind? For example, when you're feeling anxious, you're usually telling yourself that something awful is about to happen, or something bad is going to happen to you. And I would need to know the situation to make it a little richer than that. For example, but maybe somebody's criticizing you or putting you down, or whatever the thing is, and use that back cognitive specificity theory. You see, the thoughts that trigger anxiety will always be thoughts of danger, the prediction that something bad is going to happen. When people are depressed, the thoughts that upset them will generally be thoughts of loss of something central to their self-esteem. You may be telling yourself, I'm a failure, or I shouldn't have screwed up, or I could never be happy without her love, or I could never be happy without his love, something like that. When you're feeling guilty or ashamed, you're always telling yourself that you're a bad person, or that you violated your own value system. When you're feeling hopeless, you'll always be telling yourself that things can't change, that your misery will go on forever, that your problems can't be solved. When you're feeling angry, you'll be usually telling, or resentful, you'll be telling yourself that someone is treating you unfairly, or that the other person is being a jerk, or they only care about themselves, or they're trying to hurt you, something along those lines. And so these are some guidelines that can help the person identify their negative thoughts. If the person is still zeroing out, which would be extremely rare, especially if the person wants help. Now, they might say, I don't know what my thoughts are, because they really don't want help. You're trying to help them, and they're trying to tell you, no, listen, I don't want your help. But assuming they do want help, then I've also told them, just make up some thoughts. I was working with a stockbroker who had predicted the fall of the stock market, several days. This was back when I was in practice, there was this thing called, I think, Black Friday or Black Monday or something, when the stock market fell 25% in one day, and he predicted it and told all of his customers, sell your stocks, the market's going to crash. So all of his customers sold their stocks, and then the stock market crashed a week later, and he looked like a genius, because they had, avoided losing all that money. And then 2 or 3 months later, he contacted all of them again and said, buy back in, the market's about to go up again. So they bought back in, and sure enough, a week later, the market started one of its greatest gains in the history of the stock market. So again, he looked like an absolute genius. But he came to me for treatment because he said he was feeling depressed or anxious all the time. And I asked him what his negative thoughts were. He said, I don't know. I don't have any negative thoughts. I'm just depressed or anxious. And I said, well, give me a specific situation where you were depressed or anxious. He said, well, I was playing golf with one of my best customers. I was about to tee off and hit the ball with my, take a golf swing at it and hit it. And I was feeling incredibly anxious. And I said, what were you telling yourself? He said, I don't know. I didn't have any thoughts. I just felt anxious. So I drew a little stick figure of a golfer holding the golf club like this, well, you can't see, but, just a head and you ought to make a stick figure. And I put a golf club there, and then I drew a bubble above the stick figure's head. And I said, imagine that you're a cartoonist and this stick figure golfer is about to hit the ball and he's feeling real anxious. Puts some thoughts in the bubble above his head so that the readers will know why he's anxious. Just make up some stuff. So he wrote in the bubble, I'll probably hook the ball into the lake. The advice I gave my customers was just luck. Pretty soon they'll find out that I'm not as smart as they thought. And then they'll lose respect for me, and I'll lose all of my customers, and I'll end up bankrupt, and I'll end up a homeless person. That's what he wrote down. And then I said, now, are these thoughts sufficient to make the stick figure golfer anxious? And he said, oh, yeah, he'd be terrified if he was thinking those thoughts. And I said, are those thoughts similar to what you were thinking? And he said, that's exactly what I was thinking. So that's an easy way to help people become more aware of their thoughts. But again, you have to make sure that you've empathized with the patient, that the patient is asking for help, because sometimes people just say, I don't know, as a way of telling you they're kind of ticked off at you and they don't like what's going on during the session. Gregory Maxwell, hi, Dr. Burns. I enjoyed your seminar in Burlingame this past August. I learned a lot. And this is an MFT intern. George, well, thank you, George. I appreciate that. And I also love the seminar in Burlingame, the 4-day intensive, and we'll be doing it again this summer. I hope you can come again. And Ali, the young woman who did the live demonstration the evening of day one and blew our minds, we posted a video of her recently on my Feeling Good blog on my website, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but if you haven't, you can look up that video that Lisa Kelly did, and we posted. It's about a 20-minute interview of her 2 or 3 weeks after the intensive, and it's absolutely amazing interview, and she's just as euphoric in that interview as she was at the end of that live demonstration, and that was one of the most inspiring live demonstrations that I've ever done. And again, Jill Levitt, my brilliant and tremendous colleague, was my co-therapist. And I just love working with Jill because she's so smart and such a clever therapist, but also because of her tremendous heart and enormous compassion. Ali said, can you write about how to deal with addiction? Just a guideline to help addicts. I actually did a post on that recently on my Feeling Good blogs, talked about something called the double paradox. And that's a good technique for first intervention with people with any kind of an addiction. The example I gave was someone, and you can go and find that blog on my website, feelinggood.com. It's one of the Feeling Good blogs, not a Feeling Good podcast, but one of the Feeling Good blogs. And I have the patient list all the advantages of eating whatever you want, whenever you want, and eating as much as you want. List all the advantages. There'll generally be 5 or 10 or 15 advantages. Then I have them list all the disadvantages of dieting and increasing your exercise, and there'll be at least 10 or 15 disadvantages of that. And then I say, well, given all the advantages of overeating and all the disadvantages of dieting and exercise, why in the world would you want to change? And that's one of the paradoxes that we use in TEAM during the phase called paradoxical agenda setting. We essentially become the patient's subconscious resistance and verbalize all the reasons not to change. And then the patient has to convince us that they still want to change in spite of that. And this is a radically different strategy from what most therapists use. And I think really to a certain extent, it's even different from motivational interviewing for addictions. And we call that sitting with open hands. And we also dangle the carrot. I say, yeah, I've got some great techniques that we could use to help you overcome your drinking, your overeating, your procrastination, whatever it is. But it isn't clear to me why you would want to do that. Look at all these benefits, and it's hard for therapists to learn to do that because the therapists are so eager to help, and the compulsion to help, to rush in and try to help the patient, is actually the cause of all or nearly all therapeutic failure. We can do more on that on another occasion, and that's just the entryway into working with someone with an addiction. I also had in last week, I think, the last one of these Facebook podcasts, I also talked about the treatment of procrastination, which is also, to my way of thinking, in the category habit or addiction. So that might be a resource for you as well. Dave, Ellen, we're grateful for your time devoted to this broadcast. What a gift. Well, I feel like $1 million when you say that. I really appreciate that, Dave, and I'm just so happy to share it. And as I say, my only disappointment in doing this is the problem that we can't have a two-way dialogue, and I suspect over time, as the technology evolves, probably the chance for something like that will evolve in the near future. One last quick one. I have a client who complains of being depressed all the time but can't narrow down a specific event for the daily mood log. And I say to the client, in that case, you're in luck. You can choose any moment as the moment you'd like help on. It could even be something as simple as sitting here in the office right now with Dr. Burns, or in your case with Gregory, feeling depressed and unhappy. So it's your choice. Just take any moment in your life when you're feeling depressed, and that will work perfectly well. Well, so many others here, and we didn't get all of them. Tai Ann Trong is asking, when will your latest book come out? I haven't had time to work on it because I'm about halfway through writing it, but then I've had 15 major presentations in the 6 weeks that we're halfway through right now. It's just been an unusually busy fall, and all the presentations are different. Like, I've got 5 coming up at the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference in Anaheim in the middle of December. And so I've had to prepare all these PowerPoint presentations, all of these handouts on a wide variety of topics. But I'm pretty much caught up on that now, and I'm looking forward to getting back to the new book shortly. I have not contacted any publishers yet because I haven't wanted the pressure of a publisher. But when I'm nearly done with it, I'll be contacting my current publishers to see if they want to have a shot at the new book, which I'm very, very excited about. Maybe, Tai Ann, you'd be someone I could send drafts of chapters to get some feedback as well. Well, there's so many others of you, Phil and Sean and Java and Jan and Dennis. And thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to all of you again next Sunday. No, I won't. Next Sunday, we'll not be doing one of these because I'll be flying up to Canada for a trauma conference in Calgary, followed by a one-day anxiety workshop in Medicine Hat. A week from Monday, you can, if you want to attend the trauma conference, you can contact Jack Hiroshi and Associates. Look them up on the web, and he's sponsoring the trauma workshop in Calgary a week from Monday. And then you can also go to my workshop page at www.feelinggood.com and find out about the week from Tuesday will be my one-day Scared Stiff workshop on anxiety disorders. That's always been a big favorite. So if you're in the area of Medicine Hat, Canada, that might be one that you would want to attend. I think they're short on space at that one, or kind of sold out already, but maybe you could twist someone's arm and still get in. Well, anyway, thank you, all of you. As I say, I'm really honored that you came. Feel free to keep shooting questions to me between these broadcasts, so I'll have plenty of questions to get the ball rolling at the start of the podcast. So that's about all. Thanks, Lisa Kelly, for helping me with these, for making it happen in the first place, and Tyann Trong, who's doing some fabulous support as well. So everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I don't know if you have Thanksgiving all over the world, but it's my favorite holiday here in America because it's just a time to get together with family without any commercialism that is so characteristic of the other holidays, and just feel grateful for being together. And I'm grateful for being with all of you today. So goodbye, everyone. And again, thank you so much.